hello, besties.
And welcome to
My Lash to Brain Cells.
I'm your host, Maddie Morris.
And I'm your host, Elliot Morris.
But you're probably like, that's not Elliot Morris.
You're probably like, that's glowed up Elliot Morris. Because yes, I have completed my glow up. It is here. I know everyone was waiting.
Bro has entered his final form.
He has entered his glown up era. And I don't even have my curl cream in today. I just have my sea salt spray. And look at those waves.
I was like,
look at those beachy waves.
I was like, you know what? Why doesn't Elliot deserve a hot girl summer?
I agree.
Like all me and my girlfools were like, yes, hot girl summer.
And I was like, I feel left out.
Elliot needs a hot boy summer. So booked him a little haircut.
Agreed.
And you're looking really cute.
Thank you.
Really cute. So if you notice anything different, it's still Elliot.
Yep.
Don't worry. Do not be afraid.
It's the same me.
Same co-host, same guy.
Same guy.
Same humble fella. But he's got some beach waves going on.
Yep.
Today, you guys.
Everyone who's on audio is just like, what are they talking about?
Okay, you guys. Today, I want to start a series of something that is really, really important. More important than pretty much anything. Because a lot of us focus on how we can scale our business, how we can hire, right? How we can open a space, how we can build our clienteles, how we can do all these advanced mapping and styling and layering techniques. And at the end of the day, there is such a huge gap in the industry today. And it is just the most basic fundamental knowledge on how our products work and how they perform. And I noticed this very recently in my DMs and in Facebook groups and in the event we attended last weekend. Lash artists are really, really hungry to be experts in the basics, and we're not focusing on fundamental lash education anymore. And I've been writing our Ultimate Fundamentals manual for the last 7-ish months now, and there's so much that I want to put into it. And I think that there is just a huge lack of understanding the basics. And people are embarrassed to ask the basics, because they don't teach it in beauty school, and sometimes they gloss over it in your beginner course. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just make this information readily available because it helps people. It allows people to perform their jobs safer. And so the first thing we're going to be talking about today is our adhesive. And my number one pet peeve is professional lash artists referring to their adhesive as glue. Glue is giving cluster vibes. It's giving DIY vibes. It's giving strip lash. We are not working with glue, right? We are working with professional grade lash adhesive that becomes completely inert and is semi-permanent until that natural lash sheds. So we want to make sure that we are treating it as respectfully as we possibly can. And I think that starts with us referring to it as adhesive. It might sound like a little thing, but don't you agree? I think that when we're working with professional grade products,
you want to give them professional grade name.
You want to call it, a professional grade name. And so let's stop calling it glue. It's adhesive. And I think those little things really, really matter. Our language matters when we speak to clients, because I hate when people say, my lash girl used a new glue on me. Like, oh, your lash artist tried a different adhesive on you. Like,
yeah, it sounds different.
Our language sets us apart as professionals. And when we talk about our products with respect, it lets our clients see us a little bit differently. So that's my 2 cents on that. I want to first talk about what lash adhesive actually is and what it's actually made out of and what it does. Do you want to start off, Elliot?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So all lash adhesives all the major lash adhesives that are commonly used today are cyanoacrylate based. So cyanoacrylates are a type of molecule that form large chains called polymers when they are exposed to hydroxide ions. That is the basic cyanoacrylate molecules. Cyanoacrylate adhesives form polymers. They form large chains, which are called polymers, when they are exposed to hydroxide ions. And so what that means is that they are functionally adhesives that react with the humidity in the air to form plastics, basically. So it turns from a liquid into a hard plastic when it reacts with humidity in the air.
And that process is called polymerization. And so it is such a pet peeve of mine when people talk about the glue drying, because adhesive doesn't dry, it cures. It cures when it reacts to moisture in the air.
Yep.
And it becomes a completely inert substance. It literally cures into a solid plastic. So after your adhesive has cured and you have bonded it, you have washed those lashes, the client leaves the door, it is not wet. It is not a liquid. It is completely polymerized and cured into a solid.
It's functionally a plastic.
Functionally a plastic.
And the hydroxide ions that it's reacting with are naturally present in water. So when you are talking about the humidity in the air, that humidity, the water that's in the air, is also going to have some hydroxide ions in it. Hydroxide ions occur when a water molecule disassociates. So what that means is that a water molecule is H2O. Everyone knows that. But sometimes if the H2O molecule, it can happen from various different things, but basically what can happen is some of those H2O molecules will disassociate. One of the hydrogen molecules will fly off, go somewhere else, and all that's left is an OH molecule. So instead of H2O, it's just one O and one H. Instead of two hydrogens and one oxygen, it's one oxygen, one hydrogen. Those are naturally present in any amount of water. They're present in very low concentrations, but those molecules specifically are what is reacting with the cyanoacrylate to jumpstart this chain reaction. And so what happens is one hydroxide ion will touch a cyanoacrylate molecule, and then it will basically start a chain reaction where it'll kick off an OH from the other end, and that will allow the cyanoacrylate to bond to another cyanoacrylate, which will allow it to bond to another, and that's what forms these long chains. So basically, it's hydroxide ions that are present in water that are causing this reaction. And hydroxide ions, the other thing that they do is they make things basic. So if you've ever heard of like the pH of liquids, or the pH, how like lemon juice is acidic and baking soda is basic, that pH is basically the measurement of hydroxide ions in something versus free hydrogen in something. So when, say in water, the hydroxide ion disassociates from a hydrogen, that means there is one free hydrogen inside the water and there's one hydroxide ion in the water. Both of those end up like canceling each other out, and they don't change the pH of the water itself. But if you have a liquid where there is more hydroxide ions in that liquid, more OH molecules in that liquid will then be basic. And if you have a liquid where there are more free hydrogen molecules or free hydrogen atoms inside of that liquid, it's going to be acidic. So lemon juice, for example, it's an acid. It has more free hydrogens in it than it does hydroxide ions in it. And baking soda, if you mix baking soda and water, you're going to have a basic solution, and that means it has more hydroxide in it than it has hydrogen in it. And so the reason you care, and the reason it's important to know this, is this is the reason that a lot of companies and a lot of people will talk about how the pH of your client's eyes and the environment around which you're putting on the lash extensions is important. Because if you are putting these lash extensions in a very acidic environment, which a lot of facial oils are acidic, the oils that come out of our face are naturally acidic, that acidic environment can cancel out the hydroxide ions that are naturally present in the humidity in the air, because it's a very small number of hydroxide ions. They can cancel out basically, and they can reform into water, because that's what happens when you have like those hydrogens come in contact with the OH molecules, because both of them are unstable. When they touch each other, they will reform, and they will basically turn back into water, and they'll cancel each other out. So that's why adding like lemon juice and baking soda together will cancel each other out, and it'll basically make a neutral substance again. So if you have a really acidic environment that you're putting your adhesive on, then it can cancel out the hydroxide molecules that are in the humidity in the air, and it can make your glue not work as well, because you're basically eliminating the molecules that are actually causing the glue to work. So this is one of the things that we need to think about when we're thinking about whether or not, when we're trying to troubleshoot if our glue is having issues. So there's a bunch of things. We'll go into all the things we need to troubleshoot.
And we'll do a whole retention episode after this.
Yeah, but that is one of the things that it's like, okay, if you figured out that like my temperature and my humidity are all good, but I'm still having issues, well, it could be that your client is oily, or there could be something else on their eye or on their eyelashes that is causing it to be acidic, or perhaps it's causing it to be too basic and it's making your glue act funny. Because if you're putting adhesive on a really basic environment, it's going to make it cure way, way faster than if you're just putting it on a neutral environment.
Period. Can we get a slay? Can we get a slay king? Can we get a period? Everyone take notes.
You did say you wanted this to be like a basic intro, so I think I might have gone a little too
No, I think you worded it a lot more eloquently than.
Hopefully that was all understandable. If that didn't make any sense, drop a comment. Tell us to tell us.
No, we can like break it down to what that means. But I want to also touch on why temperature and humidity matters, because I've seen reels on Instagram going around that say your temperature and humidity doesn't matter. That is the worst.
Wrong.
That is the worst thing I've ever seen in relation to lash education. It is literally the fundamentals. If you are not understanding how your temperature and humidity matters, you're screwing yourself. And
here's the thing. You can get by.
Yeah.
Like, you can apply lash extensions and probably be okay not knowing about any of it.
Sure.
And all you would think is like, sometimes my glue works, sometimes it doesn't.
And when we launched our adhesive, our biggest priority was that we wanted an adhesive where you could think about this a little bit less, and it could work a little bit more flexibly, whether you are in a way more humid climate or not so humid. The Everywhere adhesive will perform a little bit more forgivingly for you because of the type of cyanoacrylate we use. We've gone over this in a previous podcast, but your temperature and humidity does still matter, because depending how much moisture in the air, the faster or slower your adhesive will cure. Your cure time will be affected depending on how much moisture is in the air. And why does your temperature matter, Elliot? A lot of people want to know that, because that's not how much water is in the air. That's just how hot or how cold it is.
So basically, okay, I don't want to make it like too complicated. Well, okay, you know what? You guys are smart.
They're smart.
You guys are smart. I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening. So temperature, the measurement of temperature, is essentially just measuring how much the atoms that are in the air, in everything, are vibrating. So the more something is vibrating, the higher its temperature. Essentially.
How good are your vibes in your environment?
Yeah.
We talk about temperature and humidity, but what's your vibe check?
What's your vibe check? Vibe check. Temperature is just a vibe check. It's essentially, if you get one thing out of this episode, is its temperature is a vibe.
Yeah. Your humidity and your vibe.
Your humidity and your vibe. That's what's important. So if something is a high temperature, like if the air outside is 100 degrees, that means the oxygen and other gas atoms that are in the air are vibrating faster than if the air is colder. So if I'm not sure if when you were in high school, maybe you remember they talked about absolute zero, which is the coldest anything can get. That is basically absolute zero, which is like negative 460 degrees Kelvin or something like that, 0 degrees Kelvin. It's like negative 460 degrees like Celsius, is the basically when something is 0 degrees Kelvin, or it's absolute zero, that means that the atoms inside that thing aren't moving at all. So if anything, and we never experience anything like that in our lives, if you're talking about like 0 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius, those atoms are still moving around a bunch. They're just moving around less than if something is hot. So the hotter something is, basically all you need to know is the more the atoms inside that thing are vibrating and moving around. What that means is that if a substance or the environment is warmer, the atoms in it are moving more and they're bumping into each other more, and there's more chances for them to react with each other. So now I think you're starting to see where I'm going with this. So if the thing that is causing our glue to work is hydroxide ions bumping into cyanoacrylate molecules, then if the temperature of both of those things is higher, that means they're both going to be moving around more, which means that there are more chances for those hydroxide ions to bump in to cyanoacrylate molecules. So if something is warmer, that means on average, those hydroxide ions are going to bump into the cyanoacrylate molecules faster, which means it's going to start that chain reaction faster, which means your glue is going to cure faster. And if your environment and your products are colder, that means that those hydroxide ions and those cyanoacrylate molecules are going to bump into each other slower because they're just moving slower, and it's going to mean that your glue will cure more slowly. Do you think does that make sense?
Can we get a Slay King? Can we get a period?
Thank you.
We're taking notes.
That's all I want.
Perfect. And I want people to just understand this before anything else. Like, we need to understand the fundamentals of how our adhesive works before you ask those questions, like what glue is best for me? You know, how do I troubleshoot my environment? This is the basics of just understanding how it works. So thank you so much, Elliot.
If it's warmer, it cures faster. If it's colder, it cures slower.
Yes.
That's you didn't need all the rest of that hullabaloo.
If you take Katie and I's training in person or our Mega Volume Masterclass online, we say that a lot. We say that in girl language. We say that a lot more basically, but that's the long version. And whether we give you the short version or the long version, that's how it works. I wanted to talk about oil and water resistant adhesives, and they are all oil and water resistant. This is a marketing claim. And I remember back when I started lashing 8 years ago, it was the biggest claim. Like, there were brands that were charging 3 times as much as another brand for an adhesive because they were like, hey, it's oil resistant. And
every cyanoacrylate based adhesive,
which honestly go off marketing queens.
Like, smart. It's like,
yeah.
So if anyone has seen Mad Men, it was a very popular TV show. The very first episode of this TV show, they're talking to this cigarette manufacturer. And basically it was at the time where the FDA was like cracking down, and cigarette manufacturers couldn't talk about any health benefits of cigarettes. And they were all freaking out because they're like, well, now we can't say our cigarettes are healthy because turns out they're not.
Do you remember when people used to
say
cigarettes were healthy?
And
marketing geniuses.
Like, the climax of this episode was this genius marketing guy is like, okay, how are these cigarettes made? And they say, well, we grow the tobacco and then we cut it, we roll it, we toast it, and then we put it into these cigarettes. And then he's like, that's it. This is our new marketing campaign. We say our tobacco is toasted. And they're like, well, everyone else's tobacco is toasted also. And then the marketing guy is like, no, their tobacco is poisonous. Your tobacco is toasted. And genius marketing. And
no company is like bad or wrong for saying that their adhesive is water and oil resistant.
That's the thing. They all are.
We need our lash artist customers to be smart and be aware that all lash adhesive, all acrylate based adhesive is oil resistant and water resistant.
They are. They're all oil resistant.
If you pour oil like vegetable oil, canola oil,
cured lash adhesive,
it will not break down no matter how long you leave it on there, because it cures to be completely inert. It cures to be a plastic. If you were to pour oil on a Barbie, the Barbie isn't going to fall apart and break down. It's basically the same thing. If you were to, I've heard people say, well, my client works on the beach and they swim a lot and that's going to break down their lashes more. No, it will not. Water physically cannot break down the adhesive. Salt in the air, all that stuff physically cannot break down the bond of the adhesive. Yes, it might wear and tear.
But that's like mechanical.
Mechanically.
If there's just subjecting their lashes to more like physical stress, like they're swimming a lot, they're getting blasted around in the ocean a lot, there's just things pulling on their eyelids and on their eyelashes, and so that is going to make them come off faster. But it's not the water or the salt or anything like that causing the glue to break down or causing the adhesive to come out. It's just like if you're like sandblasting something, like it's gonna break
mechanically,
down.
Of course, your natural lashes are probably. I mean, Elliot rubs his eyes like all day long like this, and he always has.
I couldn't have lashes.
He always has 4 or 5 naturals, come off in his hand every single time, because mechanically he's just putting wear and tear on the follicle.
And that's the thing too, is a lot of like, if you're doing your application well, the vast majority of the lashes that people are losing is from the natural lashes falling off. Like,
absolutely.
And we're at a point where most glues that you use, as long as you're using like a high quality lash adhesive and you're applying it correctly, the vast majority of lashes that you apply should never come off the natural lash until the natural lash falls out itself.
Absolutely.
And so this kind of leads us into another claim that a lot of companies make that, oh, our glue gives you 8-week retention, 9-week retention, 15-week retention.
I've seen reels with 20-week retention.
20-week retention.
Which marketing genius.
Go off. Sure, because there's a lot of glues out there that would hold a lash extension onto a natural eyelash for 20 weeks. However, no one is actually going to have that on their eye for 20 weeks because those natural lashes are growing. You're going to have grow out, and then those lashes are going to fall out. So you want to?
I would. This is why a lot of people expect their clients to have identical retention, and they charge by 2-week, 1-week, 3-week, 4-week fills. And I don't think this is an accurate way to price yourself because everyone's retention is going to be different. A lot of my mature clients or clients that are over the age of 65, 70, their lashes are actually going to stay a lot better because their lash cycle has decreased. Our hair doesn't regenerate as fast as a client who was 18, 19, and they have a lot of, sebum that's being produced. Their skin is a lot more oily. Their lash line is very healthy and it regenerates very, very quickly. So older clients might have better retention. And I had older clients who they would book their appointments with me at 6 weeks and I didn't know how to charge them. I'm like, do I charge them for a full set? Because they're coming in with work that looks 2 weeks old. This is why it's important to charge by your time. So I just have a fill option and an extended fill. And as long as you have a good amount of lashes at your fill time, you can go 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 2 weeks. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just here to fill in and give you maintenance on your existing lashes that you have. The other thing is, what was I going to say? It was important. If you ever see me repost one of our customers that says, this is my retention at 3 weeks using the Everywhere adhesive. It's not that I am claiming that the Everywhere adhesive gives you 3-week retention. It's that I'm showing off how well our customer's application is. And I want to highlight that they are incredible artists and they have great application. And yes, they use our products and they're happy to share about them. Like all of our brand ambassadors are always like, look at my retention using the Everywhere adhesive. And I love that they have found an adhesive that is flexible and works for them and gives them great bonds and great attachment. But also, I just want to highlight them as an artist, right? I don't want to make claims that they can only get great retention using the Everywhere adhesive because you can get great retention using other adhesives. Absolutely.
Like we didn't create an adhesive that magically doubles your retention.
No.
Because we are at the point where a lot of good adhesives, I'm not going to say all the adhesives that are on the market because there are some bad adhesives on the market for sure.
Some are terrible.
But most of the good adhesives on the market are all going to give similar retention because they are all basically permanently bonding the lashes onto the natural lash. And unless you pop them off manually, you banana peel them off, or your client goes,
you manually,
unless you're purposefully
apply some pressure from the base and slide them off.
Yeah. They aren't going to come off that natural lash. And the thing that actually limits retention and causes your clients to need to come in for fills is their natural lashes falling out. And so that is an important thing that I think people need to know because it's like, it is kind of in a lot of lash brands
marketing
interest.
Yeah.
Well, it's in their interest to say like, we give better retention because it's like a lot of customers are going to hear that and they're going to be like, oh, well, this adhesive is better because it gives better retention. But our philosophy with Light Heart Lash is that we will be 100% honest with you. And the honest state of the market is that a lot of good adhesives are going to give basically the same retention. There are differences though in how those adhesives work and how they cure. And those are the places where we think our adhesive is differentiated. And we have worked to create an adhesive that is better than the other offerings on the market in other ways, like its cure time. We've created an adhesive where it cures quickly, but not too quickly for earlier or beginner artists to work with. It has a really nice viscosity and it cures to be really, really flexible and rubbery, so it's very comfortable for your clients while still giving them very, very good retention. Those are ways that our adhesive is differentiated, but is not differentiated in that it will somehow give you 20, 30, 50-week retention, and your clients will never have to see you again. That's because that is limited by your client's natural lash cycle.
Period, king.
Period.
The other thing that I want to touch on with that and troubleshooting your retention is you have to be troubleshooting the individual client, because if you have, it all starts with precise application, using enough adhesive, making sure that you are always getting at least a 2 millimeter attachment zone, putting at least 2 millimeters of adhesive on the base of your extension. If you're using a longer extension, like a 15 millimeter or 14 millimeter, you're going to have to use more adhesive on the base to compensate for that extra length, making sure you're using enough, making sure you're applying very, very close to the skin without ever touching it. I apply 0.5 to 1 millimeter away from the skin every single time. There should be no visible gap between the skin and the lash if you were to look at it. And then always making sure that you are very, very, you're attaching that extension, pressing up against the lash. Whether you wrap, I like to wrap extensions, but you don't have to. As long as you are pressing that extension from the side, bottom, or top into the natural lash wall, the adhesive is still wet. All those things are the most important. But if you are having a client struggle with their retention, we need to be doing a thorough consultation and doing a consultation every few appointments. Do they have any medical contraindications? Do they have any hormonal imbalances? Are they on Accutane? Are they switching up their skincare routine? How are they washing their lashes? Are they picking or pulling? Is there anything that would prohibit them from having really, really excellent bonds and excellent retention? So having those conversations as well is super important. When people tell me, hey, my retention sucks, I always ask, is it every client or is it just 3 or 4? Well, it's just 3 or 4. Now we're talking. Tell me everything. I cannot help you without all that information, but you need to get it first and have those conversations with your clients, because you're a professional. You are the one that is going to be giving them the best tailored results. And not only are you wanting to give them the best tailored results with their styling and their mapping, but also their lifestyle and their preference and their natural lash line. Do they have thinner lashes? Do you need to use a little more adhesive on them? Are they on any medications that might affect their hair growth, their nail growth, their skin, all that sort of stuff? Great things to talk about. The next thing I want to jump into is best practices, how to store your adhesive, how to work with it the best so you get the best results. These are questions that I get all the time, and there's no shame in it. I had a lash artist message me the other day, and she said, hey, Megan, I'm so embarrassed to ask you this, but I've been lashing for 12 years. Can you tell me if I store my adhesive in a glue storage container or in the box that you give us that it comes in? I don't know the answer. And I'm like, of course, like, absolutely. You should always be wanting to do the best basics. It all starts with the basics. And no matter
they say that people who are masters always do the basics.
Always do the basics. You cannot be a master at anything till you master the basics consistently. So I applaud her for asking, right? As far as glue storage, it doesn't matter if you store it in one of those containers or you put it in rice, or, you do all those things. You can store it in the beautiful box that we give you that it comes in. That's what I store mine in. What matters most is that you store it away from direct sunlight. You don't want it sitting in the hot sun.
You want it in a cool, dry place.
Yes. So I always put mine in my cabinet, out of the box or in the box, just away from any heat source or direct sunlight.
We ship it to you with a little desiccant packet, which will dry out the air in the box. So that is one nice thing about, you can keep it in the box because we have the desiccant packets in there, so it will stay dry. And the reason that you want it to be in that cool, dry place is just so that the glue isn't curing in the bottle. Because if it's in a very moist place, then some of that moisture can get in through the lid of the bottle, because you're never going to have a perfect seal unless you have like a stopper in the nozzle, and so you have to puncture the nozzle. Even with the lid on there, it's not going to be a perfect seal, so you can get some moisture in there if it's not in a dry place. And that's just to prolong the life of your adhesive so that you don't have to be repurchasing it all the time.
And recently we started sealing the caps of the bottles. So a lot of people have messaged me and they're like, hey, my glue doesn't open. It is sealed.
This is another thing.
This is a feature.
And this isn't just us. This is a lot of other
brands are
companies will do it.
This, yeah.
If you get a glue and you squeeze it and it seems like nothing's coming out, probably you need to use a pin. We include a pin in the box with ours.
Most companies would if they come sealed.
Yeah, if they come sealed, you need to use that pin to puncture the nozzle. And then that is what will allow the glue to come out. And when you are, also good rule of thumb, when you are puncturing that, you should have it straight up and down, and kind of like tap it on your table a bit to make sure there's no glue that's kind of like right underneath the nozzle, because depending on your elevation, the contents inside of the glue bottle can be under pressure. Like our adhesive is bottled in South Korea, which is basically at sea level. So if you are at elevation, if you're say in Denver, Colorado, or you're even here in Phoenix, where at a bit of an elevation, the air pressure is going to be lower. And so the pressure inside of the bottle is slightly higher than the air pressure around. So there's a little bit of pressure that's pushing out of the bottle. So if there's glue that's like right underneath the nozzle and then you puncture it, that glue can kind of spurt out like a little tiny like squirt gun, like squirt the glue out, and you don't want that. Squirt the adhesive out, I should say. You don't want that.
Elliot.
I know, right? I'm so bad. Like
Rookie
mistake. And so you don't want that, because then it'll start drying on your stuff. So just be careful with that. But you know, other than that, nothing to worry about. Just puncture the lid, easy peasy. And the other thing too is a lot of people will ask if they should store their glue in a refrigerator. Yes. And so it is not. So here's the thing. It is not bad for glue to be stored in a refrigerator, for it to be cold, as long as it's not too cold. You don't want it to go below like 12 degrees Celsius. So that's like kind of wine cooler temperature. It's not bad for the glue to be cool. The big issue, though, with storing glue in a refrigerator is that if you're...
I will also just say, a lot of people want to know, they're always like, what do you do, though? I do not store my adhesive in a refrigerator.
And you don't need to. That's the thing. You don't need to, because it does introduce one big issue, and that's if you put your glue in a refrigerator and then you take it out and then you put it back in and then you take it out, every cycle that you're doing, there's going to be condensation that is happening, because basically hot air can hold a lot more moisture than cold air can. And so if you're warming your adhesive up by bringing it out and then you're putting it back into a refrigerator, you're going to get a lot of condensation happening inside of the cap of your adhesive, and that is going to cause your glue to start curing very, very quickly, because that water is coming out of the air as it gets colder, and it's that water is then coming in contact with your adhesive. A lot of times it'll be the air that's actually inside of the bottle. As it cools down, it'll like condensate, it'll cure parts of your adhesive, and then your adhesive, that's what can cause your adhesive to get like really stringy and start looking really weird and kind of clumpy inside of the bottle. It's because if you're warming it up and then cooling it off and then warming it up and then cooling it off, you're causing all these condensation cycles to happen. And that water that comes in contact with your glue can mess it up. So you may think, oh, I'm storing my glue in my fridge, like a cool, dry place. Well, a cooler and drier place is even better. I'll put it in my refrigerator. Wrong, because it's the act of warming it up and then cooling it off is what is going to cause a lot more issues than if you just keep it in a cabinet, keep it in a dark like cabinet somewhere, and then you just take it out and there's not these big temperature swings in the glue.
Period. Slay King. A lot of people ask me about shaking their lash adhesive. Yes, you need to thoroughly mix it every single time. All of those ingredients naturally separate in the bottle. And some sink to the bottom and some rest on the top. And so if you're noticing a difference in viscosity, a difference in color, it's because your adhesive isn't mixed properly all the way. You can use a glue mixer. You can get them on Amazon. I shake it with my hand, and I always shake it with the cap off. Take the cap off and put a lint-free wipe or a sponge over the tip when you shake it. Shake it away from your face just in case. And I do this because we don't want to even risk a little bit of adhesive building up in the cap of the nozzle, because that is going to be dry, cured adhesive in the top of the nozzle. And we always want to keep that clean, because we like to say cured glue cures glue. If you have cured adhesive in the tip of the nozzle and it's really crusty, you've seen it all crusty in the tip of the nozzle, and then you are putting it over your liquid adhesive, it could, if it's bad enough, prematurely start to cure the adhesive that is still in the bottle.
Well, and if you're thinking about what we talked about earlier, the way our adhesive cures is because as the adhesive cures, it triggers this chain reaction of cyanoacrylate molecules bonding together and then touching new ones, and then those bonding, it causes this big chain reaction. If you have some that's already cured and then it comes in contact with uncured adhesive, it's going to cure it because it's just going to keep doing that chain reaction. So absolutely want to keep cured glue away from your still liquid usable adhesive.
Yes, absolutely. And you can also, when you get a fresh glue dot, you can give it a little tiny squeeze just to remove. If you notice that there's a little bit of adhesive in that clear nozzle kind of stuck there, you can totally just give it a little squeeze and that kind of like releases that little bit of air.
We keep saying glue.
I know.
But the thing is, it's been such
I try not to.
Well, it's such a common thing in our industry to call it glue, but and I don't think it is an issue when you're like talking about it. But if you're talking to your client specifically,
I think conversationally, like we can
conversationally,
call it
absolutely, you're explaining it. Like, but if you're talking to your client specifically,
or
that's
you're posting about it.
Yeah, that's when I think it's important to call it adhesive, just to have that extra level of like professionality. If you're like just talking about it with like other lash artists, you're like explaining, or maybe you're having like a big long conversation about it. Like if you call it glue, it's like not the end of the world.
Knock yourself out.
But if you're like having
our verbiage matters to our clients.
If you're introducing it,
if
you're introducing it to your client, if you're like talking about it online, adhesive I think is a little better because it's more accurate.
It is a little bit more accurate. I wanted to talk about our Everywhere adhesive, something that we have on the bottle. So on the bottle, if you turn it over, it has a date on the bottom.
The new batch is going to be the expiration.
I know, guys, we made an oopsie. When we launched I think it's an oopsie. When we launched our adhesive, we put a date on the bottom of the bottle, and that was the date that
it was the bottling date.
It was the bottling date. So the adhesive is like incredibly fresh. It's when it was bottled. And I was like, and we were like, oh, we think people will like to know when this fresh bottle was bottled, sent it off, but people think it's the expiration date. So going forward, we will be putting the expiration date on the bottom. So if you purchased a bottle from us in the past 2 months that we have had a brand, it was the date that it was bottled. So going forward, it will be the expiration date.
It will be the expiration date starting probably like a month or two from now.
I literally didn't know that would be something that...
No, I didn't think about it either. I thought, oh yeah, it's the bottling date. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like a couple months ago.
It did not make sense.
Yeah, no, that was our bad.
Expiration date will be in the bottle for this next batch that we have.
People wonder how long can glue last once you open it?
Yep. We recommend that once you open it and start to use it, about 3 months, a good 90 days is going to be when the adhesive performs the best for you. And I think that one thing about really, really cheap adhesives that you buy, like on Amazon or something, a lot of the time there is a lot of them sitting on a shelf for a period of time. And I think that's kind of the pro of buying from a lash brand, like a lash specific brand, is there's more turnover, a little bit more turnover and a little bit more care for the regulation of that sort of stuff. It was a long time ago. There was something I saw in a Facebook group where someone was talking about like a very popular Amazon brand that just was selling expired adhesive because they just had hundreds of thousands on the shelf that they weren't turning over. And I think that's the beauty of buying from a lash brand that cares, is they're able to care about that sort of stuff. Well,
and that's one of the reasons that you'll see such big price differences in glue is because if you buy a ton of glues, you can drive the price per unit down quite a bit. However, a lot of brands, even larger brands, including us, not that we're a larger brand, I'm saying larger brands than us, will buy their glue in much smaller batches
to keep the integrity of that
exactly
safe.
Because if you're say a Amazon brand and you want to get the lowest price possible so you can sell your glue on Amazon for rock bottom prices, you need to buy like 1 year's worth of adhesive all at once, get that shipment all at once in order to get a really low price so that then you can price your glue very low to the consumer. But if you're buying a year's worth of glue, then by the end of that year, that glue's been sitting around in a warehouse for a year. And a lot of these warehouses aren't temperature controlled. And so like we tell you, store your glue in a cool, dry place. They are not storing their glue in cool places.
Not.
And so that glue is going through a ton over that year. And by just randomly, depending on where in that purchase cycle you purchase from them, you could get glue that is way expired. And you would have no way of knowing that because it's just kind of luck of the draw. If you're buying it right at the beginning, that glue is probably really fresh, but you have no idea whether they bought it 1 month ago or whether they bought it 12 months ago.
There's always a cost of something. You know, if you're spending $15 on adhesive, there's another hidden cost, and that might be the cost of, you know, sacrificing the quality and integrity.
And it could be fine. It could be very fresh. It's probably not quite as high quality of a glue, but you know, it could be fresh and you're not going to have a lot of issues, but you're kind of rolling the dice. It could be 12 months old and you would have no way of knowing.
No. A lot of people want to know about fresh glue dots. So we always recommend using a palette on a tile next to. I think that is the best practice for your adhesive. If you're using something like a jade stone, you can't really control the amount of adhesive that you have on it. If you are using a glue ring, you're going to be using a lot more adhesive. Truly, whatever works for you. That's just what I use in my practice. What I think is the easiest way to control your adhesive is next to you on a tile in our little star glue palettes. And you need to get a lot of people are like, do I need to change it every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes? The timing really doesn't matter because it all depends on how fast you're working. If you're a really speedy lash artist and you are absolutely flying through fans, you're making a fan in 4 to 5 seconds and then applying it, and making a fan in 4 to 5 seconds and applying it, then you're going to be using up your adhesive dot a lot faster, probably within a matter of, 6-7 minutes, honestly, getting a new one. If you're working a lot slower and depending again on your humidity and your environment, your adhesive probably will last a little bit longer. So it's not about, don't be looking at the clock being like, oh, it's been 8 minutes, I need a fresh glue dot, because that adhesive is still, as long as it's workable, it's not tacky, it really just depends on your speed. So I wouldn't be asking those questions or worrying about that at all. If you are running through a glue dot faster, it's probably because you're working faster. If you're a little slower, that glue dot will probably last a lot longer for you. So that's my answer on that. There really is no time that I can give you, as long as it's workable for you. It doesn't spoil or go bad after a certain amount of time in that little teeny tiny glue dot. And then I want to talk about black versus clear adhesive and viscosity. So I personally believe that black and clear adhesive is preference. It's what you prefer to work with. I don't think one is better or worse than the other. I personally like to lash with the black adhesive. I like to be able to see what I'm doing. What do you think about?
I think clear adhesives, to me, I might make an enemy here.
Don't make any enemies,
I might make an enemy.
Please don't make any enemies.
They feel a little chewy to me.
They're not chewy. They're not chewy. Don't listen to Elliot. He's never placed a lash in his life.
I haven't, but if I'm looking at the two.
Why would you say that?
Because
Do you just want enemies?
I want the smoke.
You give Elliot a microphone and he's like, ah ha ha.
Ah ha ha. No, well, here's the thing about clear and black adhesives. They are functionally identical. The only difference is that with black adhesives, you are adding carbon black, which is just like carbon black is basically charcoal. It's just carbon atoms. They're the reason it's black is actually, this is very interesting. The reason it's black is actually because carbon atoms, when they are kind of in the form that they are in carbon black or that they are in charcoal, they're very like rough. And so they're not reflective. They don't reflect any light. Like the molecules themselves don't reflect any light. So they just absorb all the light that hits them. And that's what makes them black. I think that's very interesting. But
it is very interesting.
Black adhesive and clear adhesive function identically.
Yeah, I think it's preference.
Oh, and here's the thing too. Sensitive adhesives.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
I want to talk about viscosity.
Okay. Well, let me go back to
let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something. My controversial comments. I just think that if you're using black lash extensions or you're using dark lash extensions, I just think the black adhesive looks a little better because when it cures, it just blends in with the lash better, I think. And
I also like it with brown.
And I think it does look good with brown. And I think it blends in with the natural lash better than clear adhesive. I think clear adhesive, depending on...
You can see those like little bases.
Yeah, you can see the little bases. I just don't like that. And that's why I think it's chuggy. I don't think it's like wrong to use it.
It's preference. And
here's the thing, if your clients love the look with clear adhesive, then that's all that matters.
And if it's easier for you to work with. Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen pink, blue, purple, green adhesives.
And with colored lashes, I totally get the appeal of a clear adhesive.
That's the other thing.
Absolutely.
obviously, if you are doing vibrant color lashes, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, use a clear adhesive.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's when I think
I am not anti-clear adhesive. I would like to point that out because I think probably we'll sell a clear adhesive one day.
A lot of people ask me for it, and I'm like, hey, if I can make a great formula that you guys will absolutely love, then this brand isn't just for me, it's for you. I want to make things that you guys love as well.
For the girls.
So I would love to come out with a clear adhesive in the future if we can find a formula that we love and that we're obsessed with. Viscosity is a term that means how thick the actual liquid is. And so a thin viscosity is more of a watery liquid. A thicker viscosity is a little bit more viscous. It's more thick. And I personally, and I would recommend that someone that is newer to lashes and newer to fanning use a medium viscosity adhesive. And a medium viscosity is going to be a nice middle. And I like a medium because it's not going to wick up the extension as much. It's going to be a little bit easier for you to see what's going on and see how you're maneuvering it. So the Everywhere adhesive is a medium viscosity. I like a little bit thicker of an adhesive to be able to feel and see what I'm working with. But that is what viscosity means. It means how thick the actual liquid is.
Question. When you're talking about thin, medium, and thick viscosity, how would you describe those? Because I think a lot of people hear thin viscosity, medium viscosity, thick viscosity, and they're like, well, okay, but what is that? What does thick mean? Is that, am I looking at like molasses thick?
No.
Or am I looking at like olive oil thick? Like, where are we at?
When you place a drop of adhesive, say just onto a flat surface, not even in a glue tray, just onto a completely flat, say a glass surface, the medium to thicker viscosity adhesives will kind of form a bubble. And then a thinner viscosity adhesive will sort of flatten out into a puddle. So medium viscosity will naturally sort of like it'll sort of form a little dome,
like a wide bubble.
Yeah, like when I was using a jade stone, because that's what we used back in 2016. When I was using a jade stone, or I was just laying adhesive onto a piece of Scotch tape, knock myself out.
Crazy.
I would notice that when I was using a thinner viscosity adhesive, it was really tricky for me to use on a flat surface.
Because it would spread out.
It would thin out, and then I would have this like sticky, gluey, wet Scotch tape in front of me. And a medium viscosity adhesive became very comfortable for me to work with because I was able to always see where it was. It wouldn't spread out at all. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Now we want to talk about the elephant in the room, sensitive adhesives. Now this, I am comfortable saying that they're really there's a cost to it, because I can't say there is no such thing, because there is a such thing that exists, is like they're marketed as sensitive adhesives, but they're not a cure for people that are having allergic reactions. They're not a cure for contact dermatitis.
If a client has an allergy to cyanoacrylate, they will still be allergic to sensitive
still
adhesive.
react. Do not use a sensitive adhesive. Follow your allergy protocol. All that sensitive means, it's kind of a marketing term, and it means that there is going to be a smaller percentage of the active ingredient in that adhesive. Therefore, your client, if they're having a reaction to a certain ingredient, just by having less of it, they're still going to have a reaction. It's kind of like if someone has an allergy to peanuts, if you give them just a little sprinkle of peanuts versus a Snickers bar, they're still going to have a reaction just because there's less peanuts, if that makes sense. So with sensitive adhesives, typically that means that there is just a smaller content of cyanoacrylate, meaning that the cost is that adhesive isn't going to work as well. It's not going to stick as well. It's not going to be as heavy duty. So they're not going to get as good a retention. They're probably still going to have some sort of sensitivity or reaction.
Won't cure as fast.
It's not going to cure as fast. It's probably going to be a little harder to work with.
Slows you down.
I don't think that a sensitive adhesive is something that you should keep on hand.
And one thing that I think we see a lot of a trend we see among advanced artists is that they do not care about sensitive adhesives. And why is that? It's because their application is correct and their application is good, so that the adhesive is not coming in contact with their client's skin at all. And so they don't really care about sensitive versus not sensitive adhesives, because their application is what is preventing their clients from really having a reaction. And now your clients can have reactions from the fumes produced by cyanoacrylate curing, because all cyanoacrylate, as it cures, it does release fumes. It's an exothermic reaction, which means that it heats up as it cures, which is...
So if your clients are experiencing redness of the sclera, a sensitivity, redness or itching of the skin, it is because acrylates are skin irritants, and there was probably something during application that irritated them, and it was probably taping way too close to the eye, the actual eyeball being open during application. It's very, very common. Usually, I would say almost every single time that the eye was just open during application, that they're having any redness or sensitivity of the eyeball, or that, gosh, what else?
Or that they're using cotton-based tapes.
Sure. Yeah. Cotton-based tapes, a lot of gel pads and sensitive and medical tape, next care tapes. A lot of those contain paper tape. My gosh, all of those tapes out there contain cellulose, plant cells, cotton fiber, anything that if it comes into contact with cyanoacrylate and that exothermic reaction is occurring near cotton fiber or near any of those other ingredients, and the eye is a little bit open, you're going to get a red sclera every single time, either way. Yep. So that's one of the reasons why foam tape isn't just something that I like. It's something that I recommend as best practice.
Because it's inert, it does not react with cyanoacrylate.
It's inert. It doesn't react with cyanoacrylate. There's no cotton fiber. There's no plant cells. There's no cellulose. There's nothing that if cyanoacrylate comes into contact with, it's going to cause a further exothermic reaction and irritate the red of the eye. So foam tape, not only is it comfortable, not only is it cushy, I recommend that you get comfortable using it. It also is a little bit thicker than medical tape, so it creates a little bit of a seal naturally. I know there's a little bit of a learning curve to using foam tape, but I think that it'll be worth it for you in the long term.
It's very comfy for your client's eye.
Very comfy for your clients.
You want them to be comfy.
Yes, and you also want to be using some sort of taping method on the upper lid to close that eye if they're fluttery or jittery in the slightest. The other thing that I want to mention is there are other adhesives on the market now that are not cyanoacrylate based, that are cyanoacrylate free, that are latex based. Now we have UV and LED lash systems.
Wait, but UV ones are cyanoacrylate based.
They are cyanoacrylate based, but there are adhesives that say they're cyanoacrylate free. And I've looked into all these; they are still acrylate based. And I get asked all the time, "Will you ever come out with an acrylate free adhesive?" Currently, there is no way to create an adhesive that is acrylate free, because
I think we'll look into it.
We will look into it as much as we can.
We'll see if we can figure out a way, because I think it would be great.
It'd be amazing,
especially for like clients who actually have allergies.
It would fix so many problems for so many people, and I think that like Ellie and I will do as much research, with suppliers as we possibly can to create.
But it may not be possible. We don't know yet,
and it may not be, and it may not be in the next year or two, but I think that the industry has so much further to go. And by the time, when my kids are doing lash extensions, which of course they will.
From the age of 2.
I mean, the moment they have fine motor skills, they're going to be applying lash extensions on mama and her friends.
Yep.
They got to earn their allowance, honey. I really hope there will be a time where we can create, adhesives that somehow bond without acrylates. But currently, every time I see cyanoacrylate free, he's like, oh my gosh, they found it. What are they using? Polyacrylate, a different sort of acrylate. They're just different types of acrylates, because acrylates make things sticky. They're great. They're really, really great. And I wanted to touch on MSDS sheets really fast.
Before we get to MSDS sheets, just to kind of wrap up like sensitive adhesives, I think a lot of artists, they will notice that their clients are having reactions. They get red eyes. Their skin may be irritated, and the instant thought is, oh, it's my adhesive, which totally natural. I think that's reasonable for that to be.
Of course, that'd be your first thought. Of course.
But I think that it is, if you are experiencing that and you are experiencing reactions or redness or discomfort from your clients, I think before you think, oh, it's my glue, you should, as long as you're using like a high quality glue, you're not using some like cheapo Amazon glue, you should focus on fixing everything else that could be the problem first. And then if you fixed everything else and you're still having issues, then it could be your glue. But I would rule out every other issue that like, oh, make sure your client's eyes are fully closed. Make sure you're taping the upper lid so that they're not fluttering their eyes open if they talk. Like a lot of clients who are big talkers, you may notice that, like Madison, that their eyes get more red. And that's because as they talk, their eyes are like fluttering open. So you need to like be taping down their upper lid, which you should probably use foam tape for that, which Lightheart foam tape coming soon.
Coming very soon.
But yeah, that's the thing. I just want to wrap it up, like focus on everything else that you can control, because it's likely that is the cause of irritation and it's not the glue itself, because cyanoacrylate-based adhesives, if you are using them correctly, they're not really going to cause much irritation at all. Like cyanoacrylate is like inherently irritating, but with the proper technique, you can very, very much limit and prevent that irritation to the point where, you know, your client's eyes may experience some redness right after their appointment, but it would go away very quickly, and it's not actually like harmful to their health.
Period. And also Slay King, I have a question.
What's up?
Should we make an entirely separate episode? Because I want people to hear this next section in its entirety and not click off. Should we make an entirely next episode right after this on patch testing allergy protocol?
I think we
separate?
should. Maybe we do like an allergy and retention episode.
Let's do that for the next
Yeah.
one. So
I think that's good. Because I mean, we're already at an hour for this.
Let's close it off.
I agree.
Yeah, I think an hour is good, and then we'll make a part 2 right after this.
Yeah. Well, do you want to do MSDS sheets first? And
yeah, let's talk about MSDS sheets.
We'll wrap it up.
So my first few years of lashing, I never heard of an MSDS sheet. I never heard of a safety sheet, anything like that. My first 2 years of lashing, the salon I worked at was buying products on a site called Discount Eyelashes, which still is around. It looks like Craigslist. No shade to Discount Eyelashes. I'm sure I hope they're doing well. But I had never heard of anything like an MSDS sheet, and companies weren't really open about them. And even if I had heard about them, where do you get those? But basically, consumers and lash professionals are becoming a lot more aware of the products they're using. And I think that's incredible. And I think our industry is moving in a really informed direction. And an MSDS sheet is a safety data sheet on...
It stands for Manufacturer Safety Data Sheet.
Woo! And you should know that. And if you are introducing a new product to your clients, maybe you're wanting to switch adhesives and you want to make sure that it is safe, then you can ask a company for their MSDS sheets.
And
you can send them an
sometimes
email.
your insurance, or depending on what country you work in, you might be required
Some
to get
countries
the
actually
MSDS
require you to be able to show them.
You cannot get MSDS sheets for something like lashes themselves because they are not a like cosmetics product. They're not a solution. So there's nothing to like MSDS there. But for like your adhesive, you can get them for cleansers, bonders, primers, liquids, like any cosmetics like that you're applying to your clients or near your client's skin. Those are the kind of things that you can get MSDS sheets for. You can reach out to any brand and they will be able to send you an MSDS sheet.
They should be able to.
For their liquids.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on your country, like I said, you may be required to get them. And that's why companies have to offer them to you. And basically all an MSDS sheet is it will list out the ingredients inside of a product. So for adhesives, it'll probably say something like ethyl cyanoacrylate or methyl cyanoacrylate or ethoxyethyl cyanoacrylate or alkoxyethyl cyanoacrylate. Those are all like kind of going to be the primary active ingredients. They're all going to be some type of acrylate. And the beginning of the acrylate, whether it's ethyl or methyl or ethoxyethyl or alkoxyethyl, that basically just is referring to the type of ester that is used to form the cyanoacrylate molecule. So basically a cyanoacrylate molecule, it has like, I don't want to say this wrong because like, obviously I'm not a chemist, but as far as I understand, there's kind of like a head and a tail. And I forget if it's the head or the tail that is the cyanoacrylate part, but part of it's the cyanoacrylate part. And then part of it is the ethyl, methyl, ethoxyethyl, alkoxyethyl, or alkoxy. And those kind of get combined together, and that's what creates the full cyanoacrylate molecule. And once you have that full molecule, depending on what ester was used to create it, they'll have slightly different properties. So the bigger the ester is, the larger the whole molecule is. Generally, the more flexible the adhesive will be, because if you think about it, if you have a bunch of say you have a big long stick. If you have a big long like tree branch, if you take that and you bend it, you can bend that a lot more than if you had a bunch of like short tree branches in a bundle all together. Like that's going to be a lot harder to bend than one big long tree branch. So the longer those molecules are, the more flexible generally your end product is going to be. And they will also cure slightly differently. They'll act slightly differently. But the chemistry behind it is very, very complicated. And a lot of glues will have mixtures of different cyanoacrylates. So for example, our adhesive has both ethyl cyanoacrylate and ethoxyethyl cyanoacrylate, because if our adhesive was primarily, or if it was all ethoxyethyl cyanoacrylate, it would be too soft, and it wouldn't give you as good of retention as the kind of ratio that we found works really well for us, which is some percentage ethoxyethyl and some percentage ethyl cyanoacrylate. And that combination ends up giving you a really good result. With adhesive like molecules, like the different types of acrylates, none of them are good or bad. There's just, they just all are going to work a little differently. And so that's kind of one of those things where you should try out, you know, a few different ones and see which works best for you. If you find that you really like working with methyl cyanoacrylate based adhesives, that's totally fine. Like that's like, it's not a bad thing. And if you think those work better for you, then like go for that. If you think you like ethyl cyanoacrylate based adhesives more, like trying some out, then go with those. That works. I think we found a really, really good formula that works really, really well for a lot of people, but it does kind of come down to preference, and you may like some other than others. Then what the other thing that you'll see on an MSDS is you'll see some other ingredients like PMMA, which is polymethyl methacrylate, which is used to provide more structure to the glue and will generally make it more flexible and will generally kind of make it cure to a nicer consistency than a pure cyanoacrylate based adhesive, which can often end up being too hard. You'll also sometimes see hydroquinone in MSDS sheets. This is something that's kind of like a controversial ingredient because it's technically a skin irritant and it's a potential carcinogen. I put that in quotes because like a lot of things are potential carcinogens. We stayed away from hydroquinone in our adhesive just because I think the simpler you can make your ingredients list, the better. And if it's not strictly necessary, I would avoid it because obviously it is a controversial ingredient. And if you don't need to use it, I would say, okay, probably stay away from it. It's probably better.
Less ingredients, better ingredients.
Yeah, exactly. And so hydroquinone, though is sometimes used in adhesives as a stabilizer, which can slow down their curing time. So you'll see hydroquinone a lot of times in like slower curing adhesives because it stabilizes, it prevents it from curing as quickly. And so sometimes you'll even see it in like sensitive adhesives because they're trying to like slow them down. So they're not releasing as many fumes as fast to try and make them more sensitive. But the hydroquinone itself is a potential skin irritant. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily like the devil, but there have been some studies that have shown that, okay, it's like potentially carcinogenic at higher, in higher amounts. But I don't know about it.
Frequently asked question for Engineer Elliot.
Yeah.
What will make a glue more or less fumy?
More or less fumy. It depends on the speed at which it's curing. So if it's curing very, very fast, it's going to release more fumes more quickly. And just because the reaction is happening faster. And if it's curing more slowly, it's going to release a smaller amount of fumes over a longer period of time. The overall amount of fumes is generally pretty similar, I think, between, fast drying and slow drying adhesives. It's just kind of the intensity of the fumes that is being released because of like the speed that it's happening. So generally it'll feel like a slower drying adhesive is releasing less fumes just because the fumes aren't as intense, but the overall amount is generally about the same. As far as I understand the research on it. And that's just because as the adhesive cures, it releases some byproduct, some gaseous byproducts, like byproducts that are gases, and those are kind of unavoidable with cyanoacrylate based adhesives. And so no matter what kind of cyanoacrylate you're using, those are are always going to be present. It just depends on how quickly they're released. Period.
Last thing.
The other thing about MSDS sheets is that generally they won't list the exact percentages of ingredients, which they legally do not have to list the exact percentages of ingredients, because generally the exact formulas are like trade secrets, because, you know, companies don't want other companies to be able to just request their MSDS sheets and then copy their exact formula and then sell it for potentially cheaper. Like, say a larger company has more economies of scale and they can buy more at once, then they could just copy a formula and make it cheaper because they're able to sell way more faster. Like I was saying, with companies that are buying like 12 months at a time, if a company's selling like, you know, 20,000 glues a month, they can get them for cheaper than a company who's only selling, you know, 2,000 glues a month.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. I have to get something to Perla. So
cute.
Let's wrap her up. Last thing is, how would a lash artist acquire an MSDS sheet from a company?
You can just email them.
You can email them. If you go on a company's website, they will have an email.
You can email
info. Ours is help@lightheartlash.com or katie@lightheartlash.com. They all at lightheartlash.com emails go to one place, and that is Katie Gonzalez, and she will send it to you. So I hope you guys learned something from this episode. I hope you watch it back and take some notes, and I'm excited to get into the next one in a little bit, and we love you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Smooches.
Smooches.